Hello YouTube, I'm Jack Clark, the Eagle Musketeer, coming to you with a deck profile, but in a groovy new format because my girlfriend's got an ever so expensive camera with groovy filming capabilities, so I thought I'd do a deck profile in a slightly new format. So, forgive for any technical mishaps that may or may not happen. But yeah, today, of course, as you can tell from the title of today's video, I'm going to be coming to you with a deck profile, but a psychic deck profile. Now, for a while ago, of course, Jeff Jones piloted a very successful psychic build at a YCS or something. However, looking at the deck list, then concluding that what the fuck was he doing? I mean, honestly, it's one of those decks where you just look at it and go, I don't know anything about this deck or how it works. So, of course, being a fan of psychics, I thought I'd make my own build, but make it slightly more accessible and more to my playstyle, so it may be a little bit easier for you guys to try out if you would like to try it out on Dueling Network or on Dev Pro or whatever. But yeah, and thank you so much, Jasmine, for holding the camera, because she's lovely. But yeah, let's get straight onto the deck profile. So first off, we have 2 copies of Grand Soul, the Elemental Lord. I'm not using 3 like Jeff Jones, simply because, of course, it was a horrible dead draw, and you just don't want it. And as much as it is a good card, a lot of the times you will win due to your synchro capabilities. And actually, if you can set it up, then it's lovely, and you actually you win basically. But it's a win more card, I find it. Although it does help necessitate. I can't even speak a lot of wins. I am using 2 Giant Rat. Of course, Jeff Jones also used them. Some people have bad luck with recruiters, but this deck actually has a greater emphasis on the floaters and the recruiters simply because of its utility with creature swap, actually, which I'll get to later, because a lot of this deck's focus now shifts from summoning big-ass monsters to taking your opponent's big-ass monsters, because there's nothing more trolly than taking your opponent's stuff. Got a copy of Gauze in there because, well, it's Gauze. It begs no introduction. Next off, we've got 3 copies of Silent Psychic Wizard. Many people like using 2. I like using 3 because actually, once you've set up 1 Psychic Synchro, which you can do very easily first turn, this becomes live. Every subsequent copy becomes live, and it becomes a floater, 1900 attack point floater no less, that when it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you get a giant monster in most cases. But it also helps you set up a lot of plays with your smaller monsters, your smaller combo pieces. So I like using 3 simply because I have the space for it as well, but if you don't have the space for your own personal build, then 2 is adequate, but no less than 2. Next off, we have MVP. She's so cool, she's Serene Psychic Witch, woo. But yes, of course, she is the main floater for the deck. And of course, when she's destroyed by any means and sent from the field to the graveyard, you basically get to banish a Psychic with 2000 or less attack, I think. Yep, 2000 or so, and you get to banish it until the next standby phase, and of course that monster is then summoned. So you'll use that alongside your main Psychics being like Esper Girl, but what you'll mostly probably be doing is either banishing a copy of itself, or you'll be banishing a copy of maybe Dr. Cranium or Psychic Jumper, which, coincidentally, our next card is the good Jumper himself. Psychic Jumper, of course, Jeff Jones' build only used 1 copy, but I'm using 2 simply because, of course, greater emphasis on taking your opponent's monsters. And I have just discovered that this card is kind of, it's kind of redonkulous. It's just silly. Because, of course, in addition, the best way you can compare it is to Creature Swap, which, of course, gives you no choice in what monster you take control of, except this does. You get to target which opponent's monster you take control of, and that's just silly. If your opponent's got a really annoying monster in the way, of course, destroying it or removing it from the field is really useful, and you can do that. But actually, taking control of it of yourself and having the monster to your own advantage, even better. In addition to that, of course, being able to summon it with Emergency Teleport and such is really good because it's also a tuner monster, which means you can just take control of one of their monsters and then, of course, either use their monster for a synchro summon or one of your existing monsters for a synchro summon, so it doesn't become such a big target, really, because it's only got very small stats with only 100 attack points. Although 1500 defense actually does come in handy as a semi-decent set. Next off, we've got some one-offs. We've got Destructotron. This card's just silly. Of course, you can pay 1000 life points to destroy any one set spell or trap card on the field. Of course, you can activate that effect as many times per turn, but yes, you can completely clear the field of your opponent's back row whilst not having to worry about Starlight Road, which is actually fantastic, especially against stun decks where, of course, Starlight Road is most prevalent. But of course, this is a very good card. Of course, being able to its effect that it destroys itself if it's the only psychic monster you control as well. Also means it works exceptionally well with Creature Swap and Psychic Jumper, because of course you give your opponent control of this monster and you destroy all their cards, give it control to your opponent, and then destroys themselves during the end phase, so they don't have a monster to work with, which is fantastic, and it's just a really good all-round good monster. And plus level 4 means you can use it for synchro summoning alongside Jumper for level 6s and such. Next off, another one-off, we have Dr. Cranium. This is an odd card really, which some people don't like, but of course it has an effect that's when it's destroyed by Bell, so of course it works alongside Jumper and Creature Swap very well. But in addition to that, actually it's a form of searching that doesn't special summon the target specifically. So with it, mostly I will add to my hand Silent Psychic Wizard, because of course it gets its effect when it's normal summoned and not just when it's like special summoned generally. Of course, Psychic Wizard being 1900 attack point floater, which summons giant monsters, is very, very useful. But in addition to that, it also just adds really useful psychic monsters to my hand if I need them, or if I have no access to Serene Psychic Witch. So yes, very good card, but only in a deck that of course utilises the creature controlling and swapping stuff over. I'm using one copy of Psychic Commander, of course. I would use 2, except space. Also, I've been finding actually that 1 copy is fine. Because of course with Emergency Teleport, you will be able to special summon them very easily, and of course you'll be able to reuse them very easily with Silent Psychic Wizard, and of course you're special summoning from the graveyard cards and from your Banished Zone cards. So I find 1 is okay. 1 copy of Hush Psychic Cleric. Of course some people like using more than 1. This is a kind of a really odd combo card that I'm kind of on the fence with it. I really like using it simply because it's also level 3 but not a tuner monster, which is also very nice for synchro capabilities. But also actually it's a really good set. So like on the first turn you may not have many good moves if you can't make an immediate synchro, but actually you can set this, which is brilliant, or you can set another card and you'll be able to use its effect to, just like you would with Psychic Wizard, you're able to get back a psychic monster from your graveyard whilst banishing it at the same time. But plus, main reason why is of course Wizard banishes stuff from the graveyard to be able to use later. Witch summons stuff from the deck to be used later. This summons stuff from the graveyard, but it can also summon stuff from the hand technically. Since of course it has a discard 1 card from your hand to activate the effect. Of course if you already have a psychic monster in your graveyard, there's nothing stopping you from banishing the monster you sent from your hand to the graveyard in the first place. So of course if I've got like an Esper Girl or something in my hand that I need to banish because it has no other use otherwise, then of course I can banish it, I can send it from my hand to the graveyard with this, then use it as its own target. So it's a very good card, but I only use 1 simply because it's so quirky. Next off, we have the Adorableness with Esper Girl. Of course only using 1 copy because it's a horrendous dead draw, because of course only 500 attack points. But of course alongside Jumper it makes up 3 level 2 tuners, which you'll be using alongside your Emergency Teleport. But of course with it, you can just get a field advantage from it. You get hand advantage even, which is ever so good, and I love it. Last monster we have Reinforced Human Psychic Borg. Now this is an odd one. I quite like it simply because you banished 2 cards, up to 2 cards in your graveyard to of course give it 500 attack points each, which means it can become a 2500 attack point beater, or more specifically it gives you more graveyard control, because this deck actually uses some trap cards, so it doesn't use stuff like Psychic Overload and whatever, and it gives you a greater control over your graveyard for Grand Soil, which is the main thing. But in addition to that, of course you can summon it with Serene Psychic Witch, and actually immediately being able to make it a 2500 attack point beater is exceptionally useful, meaning because it can get over stuff, and plus that boost is permanent, which is just lovely. So that is my monster lineup. Next off we have our spells. Of course we have the 3 Psychic Teleports, which of course gets any level 3 or below Psychic monster from the deck. It doesn't really need any explanation there, simply because it's so freaking good. Next off we've got 2 copies of Creature Swap, as opposed to the 1 copy that Jeff Jones used as a kind of a tech card. Using 2 of them because of course, like I said, you'll be focusing mainly on taking your opponent's monsters if and when you can. And of course you're using a hell of a lot of searchers and recruiters that gain advantage when they are destroyed by battle or by whatever means. So of course you can take advantage of that with Creature Swap whilst taking control of your opponent's monsters. It's a very good card, very disruptive card as well, which is why I love it so. Next off we're going to go with our staples. So we've got 2 MST, Heavy Storm, Wintergeburt, also known as Monster Reborn, Swashishlock, Dark Hole, Mind Control, because of course we've got a hell of a lot of tuners and a very good synchro capability of the deck, we have one copy of Miracle Synchro Fusion. Miracle Synchro Fusion, I would use 2, except of course extra deck space is actually really quite tight, so I'm only using 1 Ultimate Axon Kicker, but because Ultimate Axon Kicker is that good, it warrants at least 1 copy of. And of course it's a very nice top deck. Next off, this is where we get slightly awkward, because I do use 2 copies of Telekinetic Parallel. I don't have 2 copies though, so for the time being, I'm using a proxy with a Vanguard card, so yay, shout out to Vanguard. But of course this is one of the really important cards of the deck, which is actually what makes the deck really work, is Telekinetic Parallel. Of course there's a really awkward common from Crimson Chronosphere. It basically allows you to special summon any number of level 2 or below psychic monsters from your graveyard, and then of course you take 300 damage times the level of the combined lot. So most of the time what you'll be doing is reborning a Psychic Jumper and one of your other monsters like Espegal, or ideally a Dr. Cranium, and of course then you have you have the setup to immediately use your Psychic Jumper's effect, and of course for minimum card presence as well. So it's a very good card, amazing in this deck. So much so that I like to call this Wishing Well Psychics, because Parallel is just that, it's just that good. Also, Slagle Double Edge looks really pretty. But yeah, those are very cool. Now we're going to go for our traps very quickly, because not much needs to be said here. To the Call Haunted, we're using a hell of a lot of searchers and recruiters. Of course, you face down, flip face up. If they're going to MST it, then summon something from the graveyard, then get it destroyed, and then you get to use the effect. Of course, I realised that I'm not using Sangan, but actually that's literally because of the space, and it's not a Psychic actually, which actually hampers its playability a hell of a lot. Next off, 2 Torrential Tribute, because it's amazing, especially with the recruiters that don't worry about where they're destroyed. And then of course you've got 1 Solemn Judgment and 2 Solemn Warning. Next off, and finally, we have the extra deck, which is the main kind of where the deck really does come alive. So of course we've got 1 Ultimate Axon Kicker to go with our Miracle Synchro Fusion. It is a ridiculous card, although of course with 1700 defense you have to be wary of Maestroke, because that thing will screw this over as like no one's business. But of course, since it can't be destroyed by card effects, you can actually have combos with Torrential Tribute, destroy their field whilst keeping your giant monster on the field. In addition, it's a semi-nomi, so I can summon it back from the graveyard with my varying effects, be it Monster Reborn or Silent Psychic Wizard or Cleric, and that actually is kind of silly, which means actually with the threat of this card being able to come back so easily, my opponent's not going to destroy my wizard so abruptly without kind of weighing up the actual kind of pros and cons of what they're freaking gonna do. Of course, we've got a Catasta, best level 5, one of my favourite synchros ever. Black Rose, because it can destroy everything, and it's very pretty. Very pretty. Gaia Knight, the Force of Earth, of course it's an Earth monster, but it's a hard generic level 6. Of course, sometimes I won't be able to go for my Psychic Nightmare, which is what I want to go for most of the time, simply because of course it will set up Miracle Synchro Fusion. But of course, Gaia Knight, 2600 attack points, gets over most things, get over Stardust at least, and it's an ever so good card. But of course, being an Earth monster means it goes towards the Earth count for Grand Soul, which is actually ever so useful, especially since it's normally like the stepping stone for bigger synchros, like my level 8 ones alongside jumpers and my other level 2 tuner monsters. Of course, we've got Magical Android being a psychic, a generic psychic synchro as well, makes it so much easier to summon. If I'm going to make a synchro first turn, it will probably be her, simply because of course during the end of the turn, of course you can gain life points. And in this deck, actually, I've had times when I've doubled my life points, which comes around once in a blue moon, but when it does happen, it's ever so nice, simply because this card exists, and also 2400 attack points, nothing to be sniffed at, as I say while sniffing. Next off, we have the Naturia synchros with Barkion, Beast, and Landois. Forgive the doorbell. Of course, these of course allow you to negate any mean of cards, and of course we acquire Earth monsters to be summoned, but yeah, you don't really need to know any more about that because they're ridiculous. Next off, Psychic Life Transfer, of course generic level 7. Its attack points are kind of a bit too low. I would love to put have space for Scrap Archfiend or something, which of course would mean that I could get over bigger monsters, but actually this is fine simply because it does the job. It will allow me to banish stuff in the graveyard if I need to banish it for a Leviera play or something. But of course it means Miracle Synchro Fusion is why it is so good. And last off, we've got our Psychic Nightmare, which of course is ridiculous. Of course, if you're able to summon it, of course, it's not generic like the other Psychic Synchros, but of course, with its effect, even if you're using it as a simple stepping stone towards getting a bigger Synchro on the field, use its effect to potentially give it the 1,000 additional attack points, which actually makes it 3,400, which is ridiculous and gets over most things in the game currently. But in addition to that, it doesn't actually do anything to the card itself. So if you're going to just use it as a stepping stone, you can reveal a card in the hand. Even if you get it wrong, it doesn't really matter because you get to see a card in the hand. I always call Monster with it, just generally as a rule of thumb, because if I reveal a Gauze, it means that in any case I'll be able to get over it, or a Tragodia. So I always call Monster unless you know full well what the card is. Next off, we have our level 8 Synchros with Scrap Dragon, Stardust, and Thought Ruler. Thought Ruler, of course, being a psychic, and it is generic, and it is ridiculous in this deck, of course, with its targeting protection for most psychics, is ridiculous, and I love it, and it's ulti, and it's so pretty. And then we've only got 2 room for Xyzes with Leviair and Zenmaines. Of course, these are level 3. You're able to summon Leviair is the one Xyz you'll go for. If you go for Xyzes at all, it just means that you are allowed to summon stuff directly from the Banished Stone without much hiccups needed. That's pretty much it, guys. Of course, if you have any questions about the deck in particular, then do say in the comments down below, or as a video response. And if you'd like to see anything more from this Psychic deck, because it's ever so lovely, and yeah, there's my token randomly, then do say in the comments down below as a video response. Of course, I do have other videos on the way, and of course, I do have a Trained Binder video, so if you're interested in wind-up stuff or whatever, then do go to that, and of course, links in the description for anything I've talked about in today's video. But until then, I'm Jack Clark, the Eagle Musketeer. More videos coming out to you soon, but until then,